Welcome to this last edition of RIL DIL Podcast. I'm your host, Surreal Gerald Quinn. Episode 900. That's going back relatively 15 years. It'll be 16 years in October officially. But we know how we do. We always celebrate. We always start out the 16th the next year, like in August, when we start talking and get into the NFL and what have you. Been a long time. A lot of episodes, a lot of guests, a lot of name changes, a lot of technology. I remember I used to do this podcast on my cell phone, believe it or not. It's some headphones. And I'm talking about headphones that you would have like Walkman like headphones. So we have come a long way. I definitely appreciate the support from everybody who used to call in. Remember, we used to do a call-in show on Blog Talk Radio, or has supported the podcast. Even if you never commented or called in, just support the podcast in any particular way, shape, or form. You are definitely appreciated. And I have, again, this episode was supposed to be about Snowfall, the latest episode of Snowfall. I couldn't do y'all like that. I had to give y'all some gems, some goodies as far as the sports and pop culture. And we have a special show. I've been looking forward to this show. Was thinking about it a lot early this morning, last night. So we're gonna get right into it. But again, I thank everybody out there who has went out their way to support this podcast, and we will continue to grow, continue to evolve as I evolve as a person and as a human being. This podcast will continue to evolve as well. Let's get right to it. I came in thinking that when this fight was announced, I came in thinking that I was going to be talking about one of the great fights in recent memory, in terms of Terence Crawford and Errol Spence. Instead, we got one of the great performances in recent memory. If anybody watched that fight, if you hadn't heard about it, Terence Crawford made history last night, becomes the first two-division unified champion, four-belt champion, two-division, two-belt champion, and first male. Shout out to Clarissa Fields, who's done it as a woman, as well, in terms of that rare accomplishment. And there's only been about around 8 to 10 guys that have won, that have been undisputed champions, have all four belts in a division. That list is very short. I mean, you're talking like Canelo's and Bernard Hopkins. I think Roy Jones is on that list as well. But he just created his own list with one of the signature performances, one of the dominant performances you will ever see. And this is not me in a moment. This is not hyperbole. As I'm watching this match, I'm saying this is one of the best boxing performances I've ever seen in my life. That's what's going on in my head in real time as I'm watching him destroy a guy in Errol Spence, who was considered to be a generational talent in his own right. I mean, Errol Spence came in undefeated. Errol Spence came in with a lot of momentum coming into his fight. He came in. Errol Spence is a great fighter in his own right. Errol Spence would be a Hall of Fame fighter when it's said and done. I don't want to hear about this narrative. Errol Spence is overrated. No. Every so often, an athlete reaches a point where the talent and physical ability and their IQ, if they have a high sports IQ, when those two mesh, it becomes a perfect storm, and things can get scary for the competition. I think of two guys in my lifetime, in particular, Michael Jordan, Game 1, 92 NBA Finals. He scores 35 points against Portland. Tiger Woods, U.S. Open 2000, where he won it by like 15 strokes, and it was like, ooh, like this dude is a major problem. Like he's gonna be a problem for the next decade. I'll put Terence Crawford's performance up there with, forget about boxing, but frankly, with any athlete that I've seen in the last 10 to 15, maybe 20 years. That's how dominant a performance that was. Like, you can't fight a better fight. And to me, it was more impressive. Like, it was that was more impressive than just knocking Spence out first round. Because that, you're talking about for 9 rounds. And that's the thing about boxing. You can be knocked out, but you can also be tortured for a lot, for 9 rounds, especially if you have a lot of pride and have a good chin. Errol Spence has a great chin because he took some shots. Like, most guys would have went down much sooner. So I give Errol Spence, his chin and his curve, his heart, his chin should never be in question because he took some nuclear weapon shots. Like shots that would have put people in the hospital. He probably went to the hospital anyway, but shots that you look at his face, you look at his eye. Like, personally, I thought they should have stopped the fight. And I think the round where he was knocked down twice, I think that was the 6th round where he knocked him down twice. I was like, they easily could have stopped the fight a couple times. I thought they should have stopped the fight at that point. But this was, in boxing, you can get tortured for 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 rounds. Like, we've seen like I've seen Bernard Hopkins, and I've seen, Floyd Mayweather just methodically just take their opponents apart, and even in a sense to even toy with them. I'm not going to knock you out. I'm not going to make this clean and quick. I'm going to make you just suffer. And this was worse than this was. I can't even say death by 1,000 cuts because those punches were not just cuts. Those punches were landed at a accuracy rate that is just unheard of. Crawford landed 50% of his punches and 60% of his power punches. Those numbers in boxing are just unheard of. Like, you don't see those type of numbers in boxing at this level. Like, we see it against, like, when Crawford is fighting somebody that a lesser name or somebody that we don't know, or you have a world champion fighting some guy that's just he's just a opponent to get him to his next fight per se. You will see those kind of numbers. Even in those mismatches, we don't see those kind of numbers. For this to happen in a fight between 2 undefeated champions, again, it's something that I've never seen before. I've never seen a fight where one guy dominate is that much better than the other guy, considering what was on the line and considering that they're both relatively in their primes. And again, I know Crawford's 35, Spence is 33. Remember, age in sports are not the same as what they used to be, considering nutrition, considering how these guys' training methods and everything that they have at their disposal. It's just not the same. Guys, like we saw, Bernard Hopkins fought till he was 50. So, and these guys are probably, with medical science, are in better shape than him. He was in tremendous condition. So these guys are in their peak, in their prime, and Crawford just absolutely took him apart. He eliminated his jab, took away the jab, and he turned it into a weapon where his jab became the weapon. We thought Spence would have an advantage with the jab. That was not the case. Everybody who liked Spence was talking about how strong he was and his power and strength would be too much for Crawford. Crawford looked like the stronger fighter physically. He looked stronger. Like, Spence could never move him off his spot. And it just, again, Crawford was just in the absolute zone. Like, you talk about athletes that are in the zone. He was in the zone last night. He looked beyond comfortable in that ring. Like, when I mean comfortable, like I said, I've never seen a boxer look as comfortable fighting. It was a fight, but it was like, he made it look so easy that it seemed effortless in that ring. Again, against a world championship boxer here. Spence is a top 5 pound for pound boxer. It still is, in my opinion. I still think highly of Errol Spence. He just ran into a guy that's just right now we have to say pound for pound is the best fighter in the world. Like, I don't think that can be disputed at this point. I know fans of Canelo, I know fans of Tyson Fury may differ, but this is the guy right now. And Spence, there was some talk that Spence was not dehydrated, but I guess the opposite of dehydrated like two where he was, yeah. So I'm trying to think about who said this. Deontay Wilder said that he thought Spence was too dehydrated, and he said his skin didn't look right. He didn't seem like himself. So I thought that was, I found that curious. I've heard a couple other boxers say that Spence physically didn't look himself. I didn't hear Spence made no excuses whatsoever. He took his ass whipping like a man, and handled himself, conducted himself, as a straight professional. I'm pulling out what Deontay Wilder. It says it seemed like Aaron was a little drained. Okay, here it was. He says, I really think Aaron was over dehydrated. You could see it in his skin and in his eyes. So, and there were a couple other people who said that one person said Spence looked like a zombie from the movie The Night and Dead. They said his skin looked pale. Said that he was, so he said that somebody said he shouldn't have been in the ring. So, it happens. Like, again, remember, so, remember, they say he has been in, whatever. Like, I don't think, we're not making excuses, but these are just some of the things that boxers, these are professional, that some of the other boxers and people who were at the fight. I know someone that actually was at the fight, and they said that that Spence looked tired. So this has been a narrative just that's been going around since the fight ended, and I've heard more than once. So, but regardless of that, you witnessed one of the great boxing performances of all time, easily. Like it's not even a question to me. And now it'd be curious to see where both fighters go from here. Spence is talking about saying that will be his last fight at 147. He's going to move up. So I'm thinking about the Charlo brothers, and that, which is a whole nother story. Jamal Charlo getting smacked by Caleb Plant. With boxing, you just never know. I don't know if that was. It didn't look staged, but I wouldn't be surprised with boxing. I just can't. You just can't trust boxing and what they'll do to try to sell a fight or try to start something to promote. Jamel Charlo will be fighting, of course, September 30th against Canelo. So, to me, the dream fight is Crawford Canelo. That to me is the dream fight. I know everybody's going to talk about Crawford Charlo eventually, but I really want to see Crawford against Canelo in the future. Frankly, I don't want to see Spence and Crawford again. I think listen, rematches he has a rematch clause. Spence has exercised that rematch clause. And it will be at 154. Even Crawford said he was hard for him to make weight at 147. So if they do fight, it will be at 154. But I can't, from what I saw last night, I can't see what Errol Spence, maybe maybe the conditioning was a factor. Maybe he wasn't physically well, but I don't I'm not excited about a rematch. When it's that decisive, that's not just a knockout would have even been this. That was worse than a knockout. You could knock anybody could be knocked out. So that could just be not so much a lucky punch, but just a flash knockout or something. A knockout is different. That was what he did to Spence was actually worse, much worse than a knockout. I frankly myself would not want to see a rematch. Now I thought before the fight that they were going to fight 3 times. I thought that it would be, and I thought Crawford was going to win the fight. I thought he was going to win a close fight. But I thought I did pick a draw. Let me check that. I picked a draw. But if somebody did win, I thought it would be a close decision, like a split decision, something like that, and that would set up a possible trilogy. I don't see that anymore. I don't see that, to be honest with you. I don't think they're going to fight again. I think that with the prospects of Canelo, the Charlos out there, those guys, even like a Caleb Plant, some of those guys that possibly out there, I think that I don't know how much juice a second fight would have in terms of selling. I really think that Crawford kind of knocked the life out of a possible rematch from that standpoint. And of course, Spence is going to want a rematch. I mean, he's going to want to redeem himself. But if you're Crawford, yeah, that's something. Is something that Crawford would desire when you beat the guy that decisively? No, it's not like Canelo and Triple G. Those fights were close. And those first couple of fights, I thought Triple G won. So that gave Canelo more incentive to people think I lost, so we need to fight again. Remember, the first fight was a draw. The second fight, Canelo Triple G fight, was a close win by Canelo, which I thought Triple G won that fight. And then the third one was decisive in 12 rounds by Canelo. Canelo clearly won that fight than when they fought last September. So that was different. But when this one-sided, I'm trying to think of what's been a just a doubt. When the last time the guys fought, had a rematch where one guy just completely dominated the other guy, and there was a rematch in recent memory? I'm trying to think. I'm sure that it has happened, but I can't think of any off the top of my head. Certainly not at this level with these two guys. I mean, that was a historic. That had as much hype going to a fight over the last 10 years. That was as much as a hype of a fight. Probably since Canelo and Triple G, and probably even more so than that. You may even go back to Mayweather, Pacquiao, to be perfectly honest with you. So, Crawford delivers just one of the great performances that you will ever see in a boxing ring. Period. And if you haven't seen the fight, you weren't able to see the fight live, you can certainly. I would watch it on YouTube or something just to see, or just watch the highlights. You don't have to watch the whole fight. But it was artistry. Like Crawford was like painting. It was like that ring was like a canvas, and he was painting all over Errol Spence's face. So during the football season, when I had Rob Sapp on, we would have a category called "Who Won the Week." Now, this will be a tough one. This will be a tough one because I could go Terence Crawford, or I can go the next gentleman we're about to talk about, and that is Jalen Brown. Jalen Brown signs a contract made official 5 years, $304 million. He will average $60 million a year. The last year of the contract will pay him basically $70 million. He's only 26 years old. Largest contract in NBA history for at least a couple months until probably Giannis signs his supermax, or maybe even Anthony Davis. He's max extension. I don't think Anthony Davis is going to be a supermax because he didn't make All NBA, so he won't get as much. He won't be eligible for that type of deal. He'll get a supermax, but not to Jalen Brown's. Not to what Jalen Brown got. Giannis will get probably. You'll see Giannis get like 5 years, $320 million, similar to what Jason Tatum will receive next summer. So listen, he's not going to be the highest paid player for long. But I think people were asking like the wrong question. First of all, it's absolute no brainer. You sign Jalen Brown because he plays a position that is the premier position in the NBA right now, and that's the wing position. It is the premier position because there are just not that many guys that are on that level that are between 6'6" and 6'10" that can do what Jalen Brown can do both sides of the ball, like as two-way players. This guy last year averaged 26 points. He's an excellent rebounder, and he's a above-average defensive player, period. So it's not even like it's yes, you signed that guy. Hear a lot of talk about, well, you can get, what if you had Mikal Bridges, or what if you had like Andrew Wiggins, then your team, then you would lose and you wouldn't you wouldn't be in the Eastern Conference Finals every year. You wouldn't be championship contenders. Okay, those players are not on the level of Jaylen Brown. They're just not. So again, you can have two players making this type of money on your team. Period. You'll have Jaylen Brown. They're going to have Jason Tatum. The key is filling out the rest of the roster. If you have two of those, and by the way, having those two guys, you should be able to fill out the rest of the roster and have a championship contender. Even paying those guys supermax money. When you have two of the top, I would say 15 to 20 players, and one of those guys being legitimately a top 7 to top 5 player in Jason Tatum. They're both young. They're both only going to get better. And to me, it was absolutely no-brainer. I went through the NBA and looked at how many number twos are as good as Jaylen Brown. How many number two players? And during my research, what I found was not only that list is short for guys who I would even consider who are even candidates, who I would even put on the same level. Most of the guys, like 95% of the league, are guys that is not even close. Like Jaylen Brown is better than 95% of the number twos in the league. I would say probably 98% of the number twos in the league. Here are some guys that would be candidates over Jaylen Brown that you could possibly make a case for taking over Jaylen Brown as a number two player. Jamal Murray, Devin Booker, Anthony Davis, and Paul George. Now, would I take Jamal Murray over Jaylen Brown? No. Why? Because I can find a point guard. The point guard position is the most loaded position in the NBA right now. There are more quality point guards. There are more quality point guards than there are any position in the league right now. It's easy to find a point guard. So just on that alone, I'm not taking. I wouldn't take Jaylen Brown with Jamal Murray, and I love Jamal Murray's game. Plus, he's had a couple of years ago, had a knee injury that kept him out basically almost 2 years. Got to take that into consideration. Jaylen Brown's never hurt. Shows up, plays every game. Never hurt. Devin Booker. Devin Booker would probably, out of this list, Devin Booker probably would be somebody who you could make a case for. And if you chose Devin Booker, I wouldn't have a major problem with it. But if I put Devin Booker on Boston, defensively, is Devin Booker as good as Jaylen Brown? Probably not. Devin Booker better offensively than Jaylen Brown? Probably. I could make a case that that's a wash. So you're going to make a case for any guy, probably would be Devin Booker. I could see that. I like that. But that's it. Anthony Davis, no. Injury, he's injured all the time. And would he be a better fit? Yeah, he would be a great fit with Boston. But I can't. He's never on the floor. Never. You're not making long playoff runs if your second best player is constantly injured. And same thing with Paul George. Paul George has some age on him right now. He's excellent when he plays, but he's starting to get up there in terms of he has missed a lot of time in recent memory, especially since he's been with the Clippers. I really can't trust Paul George is going to be on the floor, to be honest with you. Again, excellent player. Kind of redeemed himself last year when Kawhi was out. And they made that run, to the playoffs. And he had some good moments. Played well a couple years ago against Phoenix in the postseason. So he's had some postseason success when he's been on the floor. The problem is he has not been able to stay on the floor. The point is, there's only one guy in essence, one other number two player who I could make a strong case for being a better player being a better number two than Jaylen Brown. With that being said, then it's an absolute no-brainer that you sign Jaylen Brown and just build around Tatum and Brown and go from there. Remember, Boston has won a lot of games since Jaylen Brown's been there. Since Jalen Brown has been at Boston Celtics, they have done nothing but win. Whether it's Eastern Conference Finals, whether it's going to the NBA Finals, like their worst playoff result has been a first round loss to a Brooklyn team, the Brooklyn Super Team, when Brooklyn was playing just out of its mind. You remember with Durant, Harden, and Kyrie before everything went down and before the injuries, and Brooklyn looked like no one was going to touch them, that they were going to run through the playoffs and win the next 2 or 3 championships. Remember that in 2021? I know it seems like a long time ago, but that is the only first round loss that they've had in the Jalen Brown, Jason Tatum era. They've lived in the conference finals, and of course they were in the NBA finals 2 years ago, where they were 2 wins. They were up 2-1 against Golden State. So they're not that. They are legitimate championship contenders. And again, that wing position in the NBA is a position that it is the most valuable position in basketball right now, because you have to have a guy that can guard multiple positions on the perimeter. You have to have a guy like of that magnitude on your team. And Jalen Brown can guard anywhere from 2 to 3 positions. He can match up with the other team's opposing best wing. He could take pressure off Jason Tatum from that standpoint. So I don't know what the hubbub was about. Again, I think people got way too caught up in the fact that Jalen Brown became the highest paid player in NBA history. Or people say, well, is Jalen Brown actually a top player in the league? He actually is a top player in the league, because he's around top. He made All NBA. So if you make an All NBA team, you are amongst the top 15 players in the league, period. So that's not even, this is not Mike Conley Jr. Remember when Mike Conley Jr. was the highest paid player back in the day, because of all the things that everything just went right as far as him, as far as just with the salary cap spike and the fact that, that Memphis could not draw free agents. So they almost, in a way, had to give Mike Conley like the highest paid contract in NBA history for about a year. So until I think Steph Curry. So for like a year, he was the highest paid player in NBA history. And I don't think Mike Conley ever made All NBA, by the way. But you understood the deal because of the circumstances that Memphis was in. And then, by the way, Memphis had success in the Mike Conley era. The grit and grind, they were in the playoffs every year. They made it to the second round a few times. They made it to our Eastern Conference Finals. So even though the contract he probably wasn't worth that Supermax contract, I never thought Mike Conley Jr. as a Supermax player. You could make a case for that contract considering the circumstances and the events, the amount of what went into that. Jalen Brown last year was second team All NBA. So he wasn't third team; he was second team All NBA, which means that he was amongst the best top 10 players in the league last year. So for those of you who complain about Jalen Brown, is he even one of the best players in the league? Well, last year he was one of the top 10 players in the league last year. Period. 2-time All-Star. And again, the team has done nothing but win. Since he's entered the league. And this is what really matters: how you impact winning. Boston Celtics in playoff series since Jalen Brown entered the league. Boston Celtics are 12-6. 12-6 in the playoffs. They've never lost in the first round of a playoff series. Never. 6-0. So they're minimal. They are minimum. They're going to get to the Eastern Conference semis at worst. 5-1 in the Eastern Conference semis. And again, 1-4 in the Eastern Conference. They've been in the Eastern Conference Finals 4 times. Again, they've lost. The only bad one that they've had was last year. That was the bad one, because they were clearly a better team than Miami. But the other ones, they weren't as good as those Cleveland teams with LeBron. And they weren't as good as Miami was in 2020, to be honest with you. You know what I'm saying? This team has had a lot of success during Jalen Brown's time during Jalen Brown's tenure with the team, and he's been a big part of that. Again, he's like, look at everything he does do. So, I understand We'll bring up the dribbling or lack the ball handling, the turnovers. There are some things that he can clean up, but think about what he does do. You're talking about a guy who can get you 25 a game. You're talking about a guy that can get you 6 to 8 rebounds a game. You're talking about a guy, again, that is going to be dependable, that does not get hurt. And that is a big deal in the NBA in today's NBA. And of load management and guys that just can't stay on the floor, especially a number of star players have had trouble staying on the floor. Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, Joel Embiid. I can go on and on. I can go on and on how many star players have had trouble staying on the floor. This guy and him and Tatum both, they play. They're every game. They are there every game, just about. So that's something that you can't discount. Again, Boston's on the clock. The one thing I heard also that, kind of baffles me is the fact that, what about 5 years from now? The NBA is not about, there's no 5-year plan for the NBA anymore. If you are a championship caliber team, you are on a year-to-year basis. You are playing for a champion. The time is now for Boston. It's about what can we do to win a championship right now. You're not worrying about 2027, 2029, 2030. You are worrying about 2023, 2024. Period. That's not. You can't think about the future. The future is now for Boston. The future is now for Golden State. The future is now for Denver. The future is now for Milwaukee. The future is now for Miami. The future is now for the Lakers. Those teams who have championship aspirations, the future is now for the Clippers. Which is a whole nother story, but, they'll say that for another day. So this contract is absolutely a no-brainer to me. Will he finish the contract? We'll see. I mean, I would this contract will, if he stays healthy, the contract will be fine. He's not going, his play is not going to decline. He's 26 years old. He can only get better. And these numbers in terms of salaries, the salary cap will continue to go up. The television money will come in. So this contract will look like a seemingly for a supermax deal. It's going to look regular in a couple of years, if not sooner. Well, trust me, 2024, 2025, we will not even be talking about this contract unless he gets traded. We're going to continue our series of looking at hip hop at 50, looking at albums and moments that define hip hop, that have defined hip hop over the last 50 years. This album holds a very, very special place in my heart. The Mis-education of Lauryn Hill. It came out in August of 1998. Before we get into the album, there's a lot. But I mean, there's a lot of stories that led up to his album. A lot of stories that preceded the album. A lot of stories that came after the album. So, just to give you a little background. I mean, everybody knows who Lauryn Hill is and what transpired as far as, her walking away from music, only making this one album. Basically, that was it. She came in basically like Halley's Comet. But before she made this album, she of course was a part of the Fugees. The Fugees, of course, were one of the most successful hip hop groups in the history. We're talking in 1996. She started recording this album in 97. In 1996, the Fugees were the biggest hip-hop group in the game. They were coming off The Score. The Score was one of the best hip-hop albums of the decade. They won numerous Grammy nominations. It sold a shitload of albums. And they were the it hip-hop group, period, point blank. Outkast was not Outkast yet. They were big, but they were not what they would come to turn out to be. And Tribe Called Quest was older at that point. So it was the Fugees, and it was the Fugees, and the Fugees stood alone, period. So leading into this album, the Fugees basically imploded from within. Lauryn wanted to do her own thing. She wanted to be she was gearing towards being a solo artist anyway. We all knew how talented she was. how talented she was as an MC. We basically had never seen like we had never seen anything like Lauryn Hill, even before she made the Mis-education, even before Mis-education came out, as far as someone who could sing and rap at that level. Like we like that was so we knew what type of talent she possessed. And it only made sense that she would go the solo route. We saw, Beyonce, break off from Destiny's Child, do her own thing, and I mean, that's pretty much commonplace in the history of music. Lionel Richie, Shaka Khan. I can go on and on with how many great solo acts started out with groups, and would turn out to do their own thing and go the solo route. The story that went behind this was just wild. So Lauryn was having an affair with Wyclef. This is all true. This is not gossip. This is true. These are facts. Lauryn was having an affair with Wyclef. Wyclef at the time was married. And that kind of and it got to a point where Lauryn basically says, look, I can't, besides her own ambition, want to do her own thing, that relationship just she couldn't be in a group with somebody that she in essence was fucking. Like that goes without saying, especially being a married man. So she has she's pregnant, and then you have a situation where Wyclef basically accused Lauryn. Now, again, I don't know if this is true or not, but Wyclef accused Lauryn Hill of making it seem like it was his baby. That making it seem like it was his baby, and of course it turns out it wasn't. She was with Rowan Marley, who used to play for the Miami Hurricanes back in the day, if you remember, for my sports fans out there. So there's a whole bunch of shit going on. Again, the Fugees imploded within. Lauryn walks away from the Fugees. She allows them to use her vocals on the score, so she did that. And she goes into the studio and starts making one of the definitive albums of the decade and one of the best albums, frankly, in the last 25 years. This album won 5 Grammys. It was Album of the Year, which is very rare in hip hop. To show you how rare it is in hip hop, the only album of the year in hip hop since Lauryn Hill was Outkast in 2004 with Speaker Box and The Love Below. So rarely does hip hop ever win an album of the year. Matter of fact, that's the list in terms of in the history of the Grammys. Lauryn Hill and Outkast are the only 2 hip hop albums that have won album of the year. Now we've had other artists like Stevie Wonder, Quincy Jones, Michael Jackson, of course, have all won album of the year respectively. But in terms of hip hop, that's the list. Lauryn Hill and Outkast in terms of hip hop. 20 million copies of this album was sold worldwide. It debuted at number 1 with 422,000 copies, which was at the time the most by any female artist. Here's what Mary J. Blige said about the album. One of the most incredible albums ever made. That's Mary J. Blige. Remember, 1998. Mary J. Blige was, almost 10 years in the game. Mary J. Blige. This is coming from Mary J. Blige. This after all the success that she had with What's the 411 and My Life and what have you. And she, of course, did some vocals on the album. Some of the people that were on this album, you had Mary J. Blige did some vocals. You had a relatively unknown pianist named John Legend, D'Angelo, Carlos Santana. As far as known acts that would become obviously great, well-known musical acts in the world of music at the time. D'Angelo was at the time. Remember, he's coming off Brown Sugar, so he was well known at the time. Of course, Carlos Santana is a legend and was a legend then. In terms of her production crew, that's the difference. That's where she kind of separated herself, because the production crew in this album was relatively unknown. She took up some relatively unknown people, took people. She didn't go the traditional route, track masters or some of these big labels per se. She went with her own sound, independent, really went independent, and that really separated her in this album from the rest of the music that was being made. Here's what she said about what she wanted to accomplish with the album. This is Lauryn Hill. I was raised on music that was recorded before technology advanced to the place where it could be smooth. I want to hear that thickness of sound. You can't get that from a computer because a computer is too perfect. But the human element, that's what makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up. So she, if you listen to the album, you could just hear the difference in production versus most of the albums that were coming out during that time. And remember, this is 1998. 1998, we are in the midst of just a golden age of music in terms of R&B and hip hop in general. Like the 90s were, to me, and again, I'm biased because that was my decade, but the 90s, I don't think there's been a better musical decade that I've in real time that I've witnessed in the 90s. Like the 90s, you talk about, if you didn't, especially in hip hop and rap, if you didn't come out with a classic, then you just might as well not even come out, like, at all. Like, that's how serious it was as far as the competition, as far as musically in hip hop and R&B. This album was an hour and 17 minutes. I listened to this album in preparation for this podcast, and I want to tell you, it took me back to 1998. Took me back to Temple University. I purchased the album right before school started. Everybody had this album. You went to the dorm rooms or the dorm floors. Everybody was playing it, and to a point to where it was like, you almost had to. It almost. So I wasn't on campus that year, which probably was a good thing from a standpoint of the album, of listening to the album, because I didn't hear it as much because I was stayed off campus that year. But this album changed the game from a standpoint of just, again, you never heard a album like this from someone. You've never seen a talent as unique like this. Lauryn Hill as a singer, songwriter, and MC, more importantly, there's never been a talent like Lauryn Hill. That combination of singer and rap, and of singer and MC, like. And we've had, again, there have been some talented ones, more talented people that you realize that have sung and rapped. Like Queen Latifah is a whole legend. I don't feel, everybody knows Queen Latifah as a rapper, and some of the hits she came out with back in the day. Queen Latifah can sing her ass off. She's a classical jazz singer. She has jazz albums that have sold millions of copies. Like, just tremendous talent, just all around. Acting as well. I hate to say it, but Drake, dope singer. I'd make a case Drake might be a better singer than MC. No, probably not. I'm just messing around. But Drake, Missy Elliott. So there have been some people who have had that combination of, and Kanye to a lesser extent. People don't want to say it, but Kanye West it's actually his vocals are. You listen to his albums. He does some of the vocals, and they're good. And they are actually real good. I'm not saying Kanye can sing, can carry a tune where he can carry a song singing, but he does vocals other than doing MCing. But no one, and I mean no one, to me, we've never seen that mix, that combination of MCing and singing. Like, if Lauryn Hill without question is the greatest female MC of all time. Like, it's without question. Like, as far as skill, it's not even the issue. There's no female MC that can spit like Lauryn Hill. No one. And you go back and listen to Fuji's album. You go back and listen to Fuji's. You'll know. I mean, that she was like the star. I mean, again, Wyclef was a talented producer. Wyclef was very talented in terms of the production, all that. We know Wyclef how dope he was. Pras was the third wheel. Let's be honest. Pras was absolutely the third wheel. Lauryn Hill was the Fugees. She was the straw that she made the Fugees go. Period. She separated the Fugees. She took the Fugees to a whole nother level from a standpoint of the skill and just the artistry. And that's one thing. And I mean, we even had Nas, basically saying that Lauryn was a top MC. Like, this is Nas talking. And there's I'm saying, if her focus was on rap and nothing else, she would be unquestionably one of the greatest rappers of all time, male or female. Like, if she zeroed in on rap and continued to make music, it wouldn't be we would be talking about Lauryn Hill up there with Nas and Jay-Z and Kendrick and Biggie and all those people, without question. And again, for all due respect to the female MCs, MC Lights, the Queen Latifahs, whoever you want to throw in, Nicki Minaj, Lil Kim. There's no one that's ever compared. Roxanne Shante for the older generation. No one is Lauryn Hill as an MC. No female artist. No one. No, it's not. Again, it's not even a debate to me. And this album, I was listening to this album. So just to go through this album, right? You have this album had 16 tracks, right? First 5 tracks, they do the intro, Lost Ones, X Factor, Zion, Doo Wop. So immediately, home run, home run, home run, home run. Like, just off the bat, Zion featuring Carlos Santana. All those songs, 5 songs off the bat, no doubt about it, hits per se. Then you kind of see the album settles in, Superstar, Final Hour, Hurt So Bad. Again, there are no skippable songs on this album to me. None. This album is this album is an hour and 17 minutes. That's a long time for an album that's not a double CD. That's an hour and 17 minutes for a single album. It's a long time in today's age. Maybe not in the early to mid 90s. So the album settles in, Superstar, Final Hour, When It Hurts So Bad. And even I'll give you the last 5 songs. Nothing Even Matters. Everything Is Everything. Mis-Education of Lauryn Hill. Can't Take My Eyes Off You. Tell Him. So again, she begins with 5 nuclear weapons in essence, and she ends the album with 5 nuclear weapons. And in between, by the way, her in between would be better than probably 80% of albums out there in general. It's like her in between stuff, in between those 10 no doubters. Like, this album basically was the perfect album in essence. It was in essence the perfect album. It was the album that I can make a case that was the best album period of the decade of the 90s. And frankly, one of the best albums that I've ever heard in any musical genre. That is the level of this album. And I've probably listened to this album as much as I've listened to any album in my life. In my lifetime, I've probably listened to this album more than any other album, period. To be perfectly honest with you. And, what transpired after the album in regards to her career, of course, remember, everybody talks about Zion, which was her first child. She had 5 kids by Rowan Marley. And of course, we all know she only made this one album. She walks away from music. There was some legal disputes in regards to some of her people's producers suing her for not giving them credits, for not giving them song credits, that they went through a whole legal litigation after this album came out. years after this album came out, they did a lot of legal battles with her own people that she, you know, assigned to work with her, producers and what have you. And you know, you look at Lauryn Hill and you look at everything that transpired with the Fugees and what ended up transpiring, even with some of the legal battles that she went through with her own peoples with this album. And you think to yourself, she just was not meant to have a long, it was inevitable that she was not going to have a long career. And I think that there are certain people that, especially artists, that are so gifted and so they're like Halley's Comet. They are rarefied air that the ability to create at a certain level for an extended period of time is just not possible. It's just not possible. And, you know, she was a known perfectionist. And let's be honest, again, she had 5 kids. She has 5 kids. Like, you know, to all the mothers out there, you know what it is to have just one child and how that affects your career and changes your life. And I think that I never got the sense from stuff that you read and things that you heard about that she never was comfortable with being in the spotlight. And she never was it seems to me like she is one of these artists that just wanted to create her music and just go home to her family. Or she wanted just the music, but didn't want everything that encompasses being a musical, not just a musician, but being a superstar, being one of the most famous artists, you know, famous people at the time when this comes out. Lauryn Hill is was one of the biggest things in music when this comes out. Like she was ahead of that trajectory of that. She was going to be one of the biggest stars in all of music, and I don't think she wanted any part of that attention. And mind you, this is pre-social media era. So if she wasn't built for the pre-social media era, there's no way. Because she's still very young. Like Lauryn Hill's not that much older. Lauryn Hill's about 47, 48, if that. I don't think she's 50 yet. As far, especially for a musical creator, like you could create music and act and things of that nature for seemingly forever if you have that type of, especially with that type of talent. But I don't think that she couldn't handle the social media era. She couldn't handle the attention. Just everybody just basically watching your every move, your every word. She wasn't cut out for that. She never was. And this is not for her. It never will be. It's just that, and I think that obviously that went into her decision not to make music. And I think, when you make an album that is considered like people, when this album came out, people were already talking about like this is one of the best albums of the decade. That this was rare. This album was on a rarefied air. Was in rare air as far as of how good it was or how great it was. There's a lot of internal pressure I can only imagine to do a follow-up like that. It has to be like, you start questioning, I'm sure you start questioning yourself as a creator. How is it possible for me to even come close to repeat this type of success or making another album like that? So I'm sure that went into her decision to just stop making music. But again, I know everything Lauryn Hill was ever longed to have a long career. Think about the Fugees. The Fugees run was not that long. It wasn't. You compare it to some of the other hip hop groups over the course, some of the other legendary hip hop groups, like Run DMC and Tribe Called Quest and those Outkast that were together for close to well over a decade, and Run DMC over a decade. Just they had a short, it was a short. They had a great run, but it was relatively a short run. Just wasn't that long. But again, this is one of the best albums. This is in terms of this is as good as album as you will ever hear. It is aged extremely well. There are albums that come out that people consider classics that just frankly have not aged well. This one ages like fine. Like this one has aged like fine wine. It's only going to get better because of how much. Just any artist that digs deep and lets you inside of them from an introspective, that's introspective, and just she lets you inside of her. In turn, you look at some of these songs. You know, I Used to Love Him was about Wyclef. Lost Ones was about the Fugees and all that shit that went on. Zion's about her son. So she really lets you inside of who she was in a vulnerable and a beautiful way, and that is something, you know, similar to like Richard Pryor, you know, at the Sunset Strip with his comedy. That's just something that just when a creative taps into that is just next level, and that's when you combine that with the talent. You have again one of the best albums in the last 50 years in the history of hip hop. It is, I would say, for the 90s, because in the 90s, you had so many classics in the 90s, but the two definitive albums of the 90s to me that stand out are Illmatic and Mis-education of Lauryn Hill. Those are two. If you ask me, what are the best hip hop albums of the 90s? Those are the two albums that stand out. So real thoughts. Happy to see that Ronnie James is doing much better. Of course, last week there was just got a tremendous scare with the cardiac arrest. Luckily, thank God that someone was there and he wasn't working out by himself. It could have turned out a different way. LeBron posted him playing piano, so he's at home, in good spirits, walking around up and about. Then, certainly looks to be seemingly going to make a full recovery. The heart is something that just is not to be played with at all. Like I encourage anybody, male, female, just go to the doctor. This young man is 18 years old in tip-top shape. It's LeBron James' son, but it doesn't matter. Like it can hit anytime. We saw Damar Hamlin last year with that situation that almost could have been fate, could have ended fatally if it wasn't for the medical staff and how close the hospital was in Cincinnati. So these things happen with athletes. These cardiac arrests, it get hit. Conditioning, things of that nature. Some things of that nature. Somewhat doesn't matter when something like that's going to hit. We've seen athletes get affected by this who are in tip-top shape, and again, fortunate for him. Hopefully moving forward, that this was just a complete one-off, and that they found out what it stemmed from, and certainly he's going to get the best medical treatment that money could buy. It's LeBron James, but I just hope that he can have a productive, not basketball career, but more importantly, a productive life in general that goes beyond basketball. Because you start talking about the heart, there's nothing to play with whatsoever. But he seems to be doing well. I don't know what's up with y'all fans. I really don't understand what's going on. What's up with y'all fans at these concerts? And what I'm talking about, a woman with her water bottle that she was drinking out of at Cardi B, in pure Cardi B fashion. Cardi B hit her, basically Randy Johnson her ass. An old baseball pitcher reference, and hit her in the. Hopefully, I hope she hit her with a microphone. I hope it looked like she hit the same girl that threw it at her. I hope she did, because fans, y'all gotta stop this shit, man. I mean, y'all gotta stop this shit. Like Cardi. First of all, Cardi B is not the one. Like, Cardi B is from the Bronx. Cardi B will cut you. I'm surprised Cardi B didn't jump in. I'm really surprised that Cardi B didn't jump in the stands and beat the shit out the girl. I try to beat the shit out the girl. I'm shocked. Like I'm sure she will. I'm sure it took everything. Look at Cardi is a very smart, business savvy. Like she's about her money. She's about her business. So she's not like going to do something that jeopardizes her whole livelihood. She got a couple kids. She's forward thinking from that standpoint. But I know if you know Cardi B and how Cardi B used to move and Cardi B being from the Bronx, Cardi B is not the one for that shit. Like that's not like she wanted to jump in the stands and rip this girl a new one. I'm sure it took everything. I'm sure if she didn't have kids, I think she would have jumped in the stands. I really think if she wasn't a mother of two kids, she would have jumped in the stands. Like I'm sure she had a split second in her mind to say, like, I'm jeopardizing my kids' financial futures if I go in and kill this B. I'm sure she said it to herself. I'm sure she said it to herself. But y'all fans, the bottom line is y'all fans gotta get your shit together. And you can't say, I mean, it's disrespectful, it's disgusting on top of it. And that if that girl got hit in the head with the microphone, she absolutely 1000% deserved it. I hope she got hit in the head with the microphone. Really. Like, you can't do no shit like that and expect someone not to react. And getting escorted by security, or getting banned from a concert, that's not enough. She actually needed to get touched by another girl. Let's keep that in mind. And Cardi B hopefully touched her with that microphone. So, yeah, that. I want to wait on the Ice Cube stuff. I had a segment on Ice Cube that I just felt like I wasn't ready. It just wasn't polished enough. I want to give it its full. I want to give that because I have a few things about Ice Cube. They're not good per se. One of the great hip hop artists and icons of this generation, of the previous generation, but he's going in the wrong direction. So I'm going to say that for later, maybe even do that on the next sports show that we do. I'm going to release one more Snowfall podcast before I have my last mini summer break. So that'll be coming out. This will be coming out tomorrow. That one will be coming out Tuesday. So you'll get that. Then we'll get a mini break. I'll do a mini break, another mini break, and then we'll be back at it, ready for football and what have you. That's going to wrap it up for this latest edition, this 900th edition of the Real Deal Podcast. Enjoy the rest of your weekend and your upcoming week. So long.